Welcome to the studio, it's Vin Jelly here. It's been a while since I've made a video, but I've been ever so busy doing all kinds of things. So here I am, entering the studio, ready for a nice morning's painting and trying to look like I'm not on camera, failing dismally. And here's the watercolour tin which I'm about to use, and it's important to have it nice and clean, ready for painting session. So I'm giving it a wipe, a little spray down as well to moisten the paint, ready to paint, and just giving it a scrub. So today I'll be painting a couple of versions of the same subject, which is a picture of an amazing faced American gentleman that I saw on a film recently and did some sketching, and here are the sketches, the first sketches, and then I traced the sketch from my sketchbook and transferred it from an A4 sketchbook to an A3 watercolour block, and there's the traced drawing ready next to the sketchbook, so you can see the size is the same, but I've positioned it on the paper nicely how I wanted it. And here's the first wash going on. I've wet the page first where the face is and putting on the first washes. So we go into time lapse now, and you can see the painting starting to develop. Quite like this stage in many ways. And he looks a little bit like a kind of a Hollywood vampire almost at this stage, which I quite like. So you can see that after the first initial washes of warm and cool, I'm putting in some of the darks to delineate the face. And here we've got a real-time close-up of me working on building up some of the glazes, which continues in this time lapse. Now you'll notice from the beginning that this is called sorting out watercolour mistakes, and I wasn't really thinking about mistakes at this stage. I was just having a great load of fun painting this guy's interesting face and thinking about the form and thinking about the drawing. And as it progressed, I was quite happy with the way it was going. Here's one of the later stages when I've more or less got the face how I want it. I think it's looking okay. And I'm working on the jacket now. So just showing that real time, illustrating how to put down the watercolour in an interesting way rather than just scrubbing away at it. Letting it pool, mixing on the page, splashing a little bit, just creating some interest in an area that's not the centre of focus, but where I can just let rip with some watercolour techniques and have some fun. A bit of dry brush wiping there, just fiddling around and exploring the paint, using my mop brush, holding it well back. Bit of splashing now. So having a bit of fun. And when I actually completed this version, I looked at it quite a few times. I don't know, I felt a bit lacklustre about it in the end. There was elements of it that I was quite pleased with. And a few years ago I would have been very pleased with it. But I kept looking at the source material again and thinking, it's just not right. I've got the proportions wrong. So in this picture it's quite foreshortened by the lens of the camera and the position of the camera. I had my camera set up to the side. But I realised that I got the head far too narrow. It was quite caricature-like in a way and elongated, and the chap's face was actually much more much shorter than I had it, and I think that quite exacerbates the film vampire, American small town vampire mystery man look, which conveyed a bit better in this shot. You can see how long faced it looks. Reminds me a bit of Norman Rockwell as well. I think it's the bow tie. There's some pictures of Norman Rockwell peering around his canvas self-portrait. It reminds me a bit of that. And he also reminds me of various other American characters, a bit like the Grant Wood's American Gothic So there's the drawing, the original drawing again. And then here's the next drawing, which is much more accurate. So I redrew it, and there's the tracing. I quite like the almost posterized quality of it when it's lying over the drawing like that. Here's it's transferred, and I'm working on the next version. So you can see some real time again. You can see how the wet in wet first washes soften the paint. You don't get these hard edged glazes that can look quite attractive and faceted at times, but for this kind of portrait I wanted to keep it fairly soft edged. So having the wetness, you've got to control that water. You've got to allow it to bleed a little bit and keep those edges soft, which can be quite tricky, but getting the paint consistency correct is all important at this stage. But because I've painted it once already, my mind is on some of the problems that I'd encountered. So this is the issue really, correcting watercolour problems. And it's difficult to actually correct them on a painting where things have gone drastically wrong. And so practice is everything. You've got to be prepared to do it a second time or a third time or a fourth time. If you've got great subject matter and a really nice material to work from, it's really worth exploiting. It's worth taking that time. This took quite a while for me to get into that mode of practice, but I'm prepared to do it 3 or 4 times. I mean, oil paintings, in the old days when I oil painted quite a lot, I wouldn't think twice about scratching something down and repainting it. But actually, it wasn't so much practice as frustration and just sort of groping around in the dark. I didn't really plan things like I do now. So I think with watercolour I've learnt to plan things much more carefully, take my time. I don't want to do them lots of different times, but actually sometimes it really pays off. So it's very worth planning it in the first instance and trying to get it right in the drawing. And this is a case where I didn't really get it right in the drawing. The first drawing was okay, the first rendering was okay, but it still wasn't right, and I should have been a bit more self-critical, I think, and that would have avoided me having to do it twice. I think I've ended up with 2 okay paintings, and the second one I'm much happier with. It's much more considered, it's more refined. I could probably take it further if I did a third version, but I think I've said what I want to say. I may tackle his face from another angle, but now I've got my eye in. I've already done a drawing from a different angle, and it really, having practiced his face, I'm quite familiar with some of the form now, having attacked it from 2 different angles. I know what to look for. I know the inset of the eyes and the proportions now and the expression on his face, so it's easier for me to see. I've got my eyes in more on the character of him. So here's another close-up in real time of me lining in the eyes, the darks of the eyes, so you can see the kind of real-time activity going on. And as I say, I've painted it once before now, so whilst it's a little bit going through the motions, it's still fun. I can let rip a little bit more now if I want to. Not that this is letting rip, it's some of the tighter work, but I know what I'm doing. I know what I need to do, and I know how to do it. So that first practice run has really paid off. And if you want to get better at things, there's no substitute for putting in the miles, as we say. There's no substitute for practice. Draw things again and again and again until you get it. It's like practicing scales on a musical instrument or practicing pieces on a musical instrument. Eventually your mind, hand-eye coordination, muscle memory kicks in, and you really do learn how to draw things and how to understand the structure of them. There's always work to be done. There's always a lot of things that you'll need to train yourself to understand. And I find that a really interesting process, and it's something I'm working on developing. It's something I should have developed a long time ago, but life gets in the way sometimes, and there just aren't enough hours in the day. During the pandemic there seemed to be a lot of time available, but I still didn't have enough time to do all the things I wanted to do, and that was quite an illustration which made me realise I really need to knuckle down to things and start making the most of my time. And when I'm drawing, I've got to really concentrate harder and make it count, and that level of concentration taking you to what people call the next level. There's always another level, and you'll never get exactly where you want to be, but you can make big steps, and when you look back in your sketchbooks or at your work, you can hopefully see improvements if you apply that critical, self-critical set of values. You should make some progress. That's a really interesting thing. There are times when you think, oh, I could never be a portrait painter, oh, I could never paint figures. But if you really want to do it, and you put in those hours and you really work hard at it, sometimes it hurts. The concentration actually hurts, but the more you do it, it hurts less. It doesn't tax you so much. You just become numb to it. You become used to it. And I think that's a really useful piece of info for those of you out there who might think, oh God, I'm never going to make it. I've thought that lots of times, and I may never make it as a sort of well-known artist or anything like that, but I don't really care about that. To me, it's about the doing of it. That's what's important. I just get a great deal of satisfaction from painting. I don't need to sell it to anybody. It's not about that. I just do it for myself mainly. And I like teaching very much. I really enjoy sharing my knowledge with other people. But you can't substitute putting in the miles for yourself and having that personal journey and going through the inevitable times where you paint things that you really hate. And I've trashed lots of stuff in my time, but now I don't really mind. It's just part of the process. See it as practice. Just enjoy the doing and see it as practice. So there's been quite a bit of real-time footage here, and I go back to the time lapse to just reconsolidate what I've already shown you in quite speedy time now, and you can see the portrait taking shape, and you can see my palette as I mix colours and just apply them. It's quite a limited palette actually, this, only using 5 or 6 colours at the most. Looking for tones, looking for shapes, shadow shapes, keeping it as simple as possible, and actually it ends up looking more than simple probably, and because I've painted it before, as I've said, it pulls together quite well, and I've softened various edges, and here are the two pieces. I think both have merit, but I prefer the right hand one where I've resolved things. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe. See you on the next.